Thank you, Mr. President. During the break, several of our colleagues approached me to ask that I make this carry a line-by-line explication of the bill we just heard, just to make sure we know what we're voting on. I'd like to do that, and I do hate to disappoint my colleagues, but we have a long day ahead, so I'll pass. But, Mr. President, I am going to say more than good bill should pass, which is accurate, because I think we're making history this morning. I genuinely believe that 5, 10, 15 years from now, students are likely to read about this act in Oregon history textbooks, probably not as the comprehensive solution to the timber wars that have divided us for 30 years now, but a very big step in that direction. I think we can remember the events that brought us here. In early 2020, a group of Oregon's most consequential timber industry, forest landowner, and forest conservation leaders approached Governor Brown and said something like, "What we've been doing for decades now doesn't work. Will you help us set a different direction?" She said yes, and endorsed a memorandum of understanding that informed Senate Bill 1602, a bill we passed in the first special session of 2020, to ratify what became well over a year of difficult, very rigorous negotiations with the goal of, and I'll quote here, "preparing a series of changes to Oregon's Forest Practices Act based on best available science that would form the basis of an application to the federal services for an aquatic species habitat conservation plan." On October 31st of last year, after days of round-the-clock talks to iron out final details, this group of stakeholders approved and released to the public the PFA, the Private Forest Accord. The bill before us ratifies the PFA and instructs the Board of Forestry to adopt a single rule package consistent with its provisions by November 30th of this year. Instead of the line-by-line recap that so many of my colleagues want, Mr. President, I'd like to direct your attention to a one-page floor letter that you've received this morning that summarizes the PFA's content. Mr. President, I don't want to belabor the point of how remarkable this process was and how consequential the outcome is. It's not quite right to say that it's unique to receive a solution like this, meticulously hammered out by exactly the right stakeholders, because we actually experienced the very same thing yesterday with Senate Bill 1546, establishing the Elliott State Research Forest. Mr. President, for some reasons, in the same week, we received a pair of gifts of a kind that come to very few legislative assemblies at all, even once. Like yesterday's bill, the PFA didn't somehow get the enthusiastic support of every single Oregonian who cares about forests. You might have heard from some of them in recent days, and if you're reading their emails, I ask you to consider two things. One is the list of participants and endorsers of the PFA, groups that have banged endlessly their heads together for 30 plus years now. That list covers roughly the bottom fourth of this one-pager. And beyond, I won't read it because we've heard enough reading this morning. Beyond the way the list covers the territory of stakeholders, please think about what they had to do. For months, these representatives shuttled back and forth from the table to their constituent groups to win support for compromises that their folks probably didn't like very much. People had opportunities to make their case with their organizations all along the way. The negotiators did win enough support for this agreement from their groups to stick by them through what must have been brutal pressure from time to time. They kept keeping at it when many would have given up to bring us this substantive, workable, and historic accord. Please consider how difficult that must have been and how unlikely it is that those of us who weren't at the table could find a better path for healing a wound that has tortured our state for half a lifetime now. Please add your support for the Private Forest Accord with an affirmative vote for Senate Bill 1501. Thank you.